Unscripted.
One of the biggest reasons Microsoft laid out to buy the Xbox Series X or the S is the the free upgrade to smart deliveries and things like that. They were obviously going out there and making sure that everybody knew that, okay, the Xbox Series consoles could do, this or that, or they just wanted, and they used a lot of buzzwords, and they used buzzwords to quite a big effect. And I got to say that for me personally, it was never much of a selling point. I have an Xbox Series X. I think it's a really good console. Once again, I think that the content is lacking, but from a standpoint of like a lot of the stuff that they promise, like the delivery and stuff like that, some of that is still even confusing. And I'll give you a good example. I bought the version of Crash Bandicoot 4, the next gen version, but for some reason when I click on the options or whatever, it'll let me put auto HDR on and stuff like that. So is that and it's installed on the internal hard drive as well. So does that mean that it's the current gen, or is it the last gen version? Like, I really have sort of issues sort of understanding what's what when it comes to these things. And that isn't the only part. Okay, so for instance, I have Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, which I had that installed on the internal hard drive. It takes up a lot of space. So when I beat the game and stuff like that, you knew that I was running everything at like 120 frames during the campaign and stuff like that. But now I moved the game to an external hard drive. Well, I can still play it. Am I still playing the new version, or am I playing the old version? Like, there's questions that I still have, and I've tried to find the answers as to what exactly, if the game isn't installed on the internal drive but you can still play it, which version are you playing? Like, that's a really big question that I have when it comes to this stuff. So it's not just them, and Sony's kind of had the same issues where people weren't really sure which version they were playing. And I totally understand it, because it can be very confusing, right? Now, Sony also has the ability to store, new games on the external hard drives, although you can't play them off of them. So I think there's a little bit of a difference right there. Whereas on the Xbox side, I believe that you can still play most of the stuff. I'm not 100% sure on that or not, but I have been able to load up, games that were updated for the Series X and play them despite the fact that they were on an external hard drive. I'm not sure if it automatically reverts back to an older version or what the deal is, but it's just a strange thing nonetheless, and very interesting to sort of see how that kind of came about. I don't really know. But with that being said, I wanted to talk a little bit about this because obviously, I think that it's, one of those things where a lot of people are talking about it. And, to me, this is something that a lot of people are going to be kind of talking about it a little bit. We'll have to see how this kind of works out. But is this something that realistically is a problem because lack of sales on the Xbox lead to something like this? I think that this is something that a lot of people will be maybe upset about or not quite understand. So, and this isn't even like a big, huge game or like a, something like that, but this is like one of the second or third times that we've seen this. And, I think that this is just something that, that people are just going to have to deal with. So a game called Terminator Resistance, which, by the way, supposedly is a very, very good Terminator game, probably the best Terminator game, even though it's got incredibly low Metacritic scores. But Terminator Resistance Enhanced isn't going to release on the Xbox Series X or S. Which is interesting. So the release of Terminator Resistance Enhanced is still causing confusion for many Terminator fans. So in the article that I'm reading from this, which I will of course link in the description, you guys can check it out, they do the best to answer the questions and keep receiving about the upcoming Enhanced Edition, new DLC content, and the previously PC released Infiltrator mode, and hopefully it clarifies some issues from Reef Entertainment. At the current time, they only have plans to bring Enhanced to PS5, but all upcoming DLC will be made available to PC players as well. Terminator Resistance Enhanced and new DLC content coming to Xbox Series X, S at all. Reef Entertainment said, we're not planning to release the game to Xbox Series X and S. That's a pretty flat out denial, saying no. Is Terminator Resistance enhanced and new DLC content coming to Xbox One? No, as previous PC patches expected to roll out soon for both Xbox One and PS4, but don't get too excited when it does, because it apparently won't include Infiltrator mode and just contains bug fixes, some graphical improvements, and some more intellectual AI from the enemies, which will be better matched to the corresponding difficulty levels in the game, and the patch was already rolled out in the PC last year. Is Terminator Resistance enhanced and new DLC content coming to PS4? No, but players who own the PlayStation 4 version of the game will also receive a free upgrade to the PS5 version of the games. So this leaves players who want new content with two options: buy Terminator Resistance for PC or PlayStation 5. Hopefully the game will have some more longevity and more content on the PlayStation 5. Maybe it'll make it disappointing for the fans of last generation. If you have the game on Xbox, and a lot of people hyped up smart delivery and things like that. But for me personally, I think that this is something that's probably largely based on the fact that the game probably didn't sell extremely well on Xbox. And this is something that I think like a lot of people are talking about in terms of what's the long-term issue with Game Pass on the Xbox side. Yes, we all think Game Pass is a incredible value. I understand that. I get that. But at the same time, we're kind of looking at this and we're going, well, if games aren't selling as well, and listen, I get the fact that somebody's going to throw it in my face that Phil Spencer said that people buy games more when they're in Game Pass. That's a bunch of nonsense. Okay, we can just kind of put that to bed. Especially when it comes to a lot of these types of games. I think like maybe the small indies or whatever, people might buy them because they're a little bit more out in the open. But I think when it comes to like big games or whatever, I would suggest that probably they're not selling a ton of games, and we've seen this with like recent games where the games just didn't sell very well. A good example of this would be the new Hitman game, which sold like I think 80% on PlayStation platforms, as opposed to like a really piss poor number on the Xbox platform, and we're seeing stuff like that happen a lot. I would expect a big favor of the upcoming Resident Evil 8 to be on, I would suspect most of the sales are going to be on the Xbox platform, on the PlayStation platform, where Xbox gamers probably obviously won't buy it enough. Even when we saw the breakdown of Cyberpunk 2077, and we knew that Sony pulled the game from their digital store almost right away, there were still many more sales on the PlayStation platform than there were Xbox platform. So it just goes to show you, I'm not saying that like nobody in the whole world buys Xbox games. I'm obviously someone who buys Xbox games myself. But when people say that, it's just like when they say Xbox has no games, right? When people say Xbox has no games, they don't mean Xbox has 0 games. What they mean is Xbox has no big AAA exclusives, right? And they haven't had one for over 600 days now. So that's what they mean. They're not talking about, when they say Xbox has no games, they don't mean literally. It's not a literal thing where people should just think that, they actually have 0, because that's not the case. They have plenty, but it's like the games that they have are available on, PlayStation as well. So you have to kind of keep that in mind. And, as we sort of get further and further into these generation of gaming, the differences are obviously going to be the exclusives, and that's what's going to set these consoles apart. Like, what's the reason for buying an Xbox right now if all the games are basically playable on PlayStation, or the only games that aren't are just time stuff like, the Medium or whatever that's kind of crappy anyway. So, I do hope that we see some big turnaround, and I hope that, Microsoft and Sony both like knock it out of the park soon. Things are starting to, I guess, get back to normal in terms of the pandemic and things like that dying down. So hopefully these developers will be able to get back to work and kind of work out their own thing and work out, from offices and be able to communicate better, which would, get us gamers actual, more games and games that are actually better, games that are out there trying to, be what we expect them to be in terms of next generation. And I do hope that we see that incredibly soon, because that's what we all want. That's the end goal. Great games from these platforms, and I think we spend so much money on these consoles. It's really not too much to ask, and I hope that we get to see that sooner rather than later. I know a lot of you guys are excited by it, and for me too. You know, I'm really excited by what's going on, and the future looks bright, and I'm just really kind of where you guys are, which is probably cloud nine, waiting for these games to drop, hoping for the best. So with that being said, I will link all of this stuff in the description. You guys can check it out. Let me know what you think. Please sound off, rate, comics, subscribe. Thank you for watching. Have a great day. Rack 'em up. Game on, my friends. Game on. Crap Gamer out.
Unscripted.